Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Robert Ellis. For more than 50 years, I have worn this white coat, walking alongside countless souls through the vibrant seasons of spring, summer, autumn and winter in their lives. I have listened to the weary breaths, seen the worried glances, and heard the unspoken fears that come with the passing of time. Today I want to share something with you, something that is rarely spoken about but urgently important. Most deaths after the age of 70 do not come with loud warnings or dramatic illnesses. They come quietly, silently, like a cold wind you never see, but feel only when it's already upon you. And I believe if we understand these silent adversaries, we can prepare ourselves better. We can live longer and, more importantly, live more fully. So if you'll allow me, I would like to walk with you through the 6 quiet causes that too often slip by unnoticed. Stay with me, because knowing them could make all the difference for you or someone you love. The first silent threat we must talk about is the slow, quiet progression of cardiovascular disease. The heart, that faithful companion that has carried you through every joy and sorrow, does not always sound the alarm when trouble begins. It does not pound in distress the moment plaque starts building up in the arteries, nor does it cry out when blood vessels stiffen or when pressure within them rises year after year. No, the heart, like an old loyal friend, endures quietly. It fights for you day after day, often without a single complaint, until the moment it can no longer fight. I remember a man named Harold. He was 76 years old, full of life, with a steady stride and a warm smile. Every morning he would walk through the neighborhood believing that the rhythm of his steps was enough to keep his heart strong. He ate what he believed was a decent diet and rarely missed a day outdoors. Yet one evening, after a simple dinner with his family, Harold slumped over in his chair without a word. By the time the ambulance arrived, there was nothing they could do. What no one knew, not even Harold himself, was that for years he had lived with untreated high blood pressure. He had stopped checking it because he felt fine, until the day when feeling fine was no longer enough. That is the way cardiovascular disease often works. It does not ask permission. It does not announce itself loudly. It moves in slow, deliberate silence until suddenly, without ceremony, it demands a heavy price. And yet, for those willing to listen closely, the body leaves clues. Shortness of breath while climbing the stairs, swelling in the ankles that lingers into the evening, fatigue that doesn't wash away even after a night's sleep. These are not simply signs of aging to be brushed aside. They are whispers from the body, gentle reminders before the final shout. Too many ignore these signs, believing them a natural part of growing old. But I tell you now, they are not meaningless. They are messages, and they deserve your attention. The heart does not need grand gestures to be cared for. It asks for small, faithful acts, regular health screenings, mindfulness about blood pressure and cholesterol levels, daily movements that honor the joints and muscles, not exhaust them, and a steady hand when it comes to salt and sugar. These are not burdens. They are gifts we give ourselves, the simple practices that protect the years we have earned. Caring for your heart after 70 is not a matter of chasing perfection. It is a matter of choosing to listen, choosing to act, and choosing to honor the life that still pulses so faithfully within you. And just as the heart can falter without fanfare, so too can the lungs, those quiet keepers of breath that sustain our every moment. Let us turn now to the second silent threat, the slow, often unnoticed damage that accumulates in the lungs over the course of a lifetime. Just as the heart weathers the quiet wear of time, so too do the lungs, those tireless gatekeepers of breath that have expanded and contracted countless times since the day you first cried your way into this world. The lungs do not fail all at once. They do not collapse in a moment of great drama. Instead, they wear down slowly, silently, one breath at a time, until the air that once came easily now feels heavy, strained, or incomplete. The tragedy is that many of us dismiss the early signs. We tell ourselves it's normal to slow down. We believe it is natural to feel a bit winded after walking from the living room to the kitchen, to to shrug off a persistent cough, or to think little of the tightness in our chest when we lie down to rest. But these are not merely signs of growing older. They are the lungs speaking to us, softly, steadily, warning that the exchange of oxygen, that invisible, precious transaction, is no longer what it once was. I think now of Linda, an 82-year-old woman I once cared for. She had never touched a cigarette in her life. She believed herself safe from the dangers we so often associate with lung disease, but Linda had spent a lifetime in a home filled with secondhand smoke. She had breathed in the invisible burdens of polluted city air. Over decades, her lungs lost their youthful elasticity, their ability to stretch and contract fully. She developed a condition her doctor called restrictive lung disease, a slow tightening of the very spaces that were meant to be open and free. By the time she noticed she could no longer take a deep, satisfying breath, the damage had already etched itself deep into her tissues. The truth is that lung damage does not always come from a single act or event. Sometimes it is the flu that never fully healed, leaving behind scar tissue. Sometimes it is years of inhaling dust, smoke, or fumes without realizing their cost. Sometimes it is simply the natural inflammation of age, quietly building year after year. You do not feel it day to day, not at first, but one day a simple cold becomes pneumonia. A night of restless breathing turns into weeks of oxygen tanks and hospital beds. The slow weakening reveals itself not with a bang, but with a long, aching whisper. And yet there is hope. Protecting the lungs is not about grand interventions. It is about small, steady attentiveness. Receiving your flu and pneumonia vaccines each year, using a humidifier to ease dryness in colder months, avoiding secondhand smoke, and keeping a watchful eye on even the mildest breathlessness. It is about moving your body gently but consistently, encouraging the lungs to keep stretching and working, even when the temptation is to sit still. Most of all, it is about refusing to ignore the subtle signs your breath may be offering you. The lungs do not have pain receptors in the way that other organs do. They do not scream when they struggle. They whisper. And for those wise enough to listen early, there is still time to respond, to protect, and to preserve the simple sacred gift of breath. As we move forward, having spoken of the heart and the lungs, the two silent foundations of life, we must now turn our attention to another quiet adversary, the hidden, creeping toll of mismanaged diabetes. A condition that wears away the body not in moments, but in years. As we move beyond the heart and the lungs, we find ourselves face to face with another silent adversary, one that often weaves its way through the body unnoticed for years, slowly dismantling the very foundations of health from within. I am speaking of diabetes, a condition that, when mismanaged or left undetected, quietly, patiently, and devastatingly erodes the body's resilience. Unlike a heart attack or a stroke, diabetes rarely announces its presence with drama. It does not come roaring into a room demanding attention. Instead, it moves like water behind a crumbling wall, invisible at first, steady, and relentless, undermining everything it touches. High blood sugar, maintained over years, gnaws away at the small blood vessels that nourish the nerves, the kidneys, the eyes, and the skin. Day by day, year by year, it weakens the body's natural defenses until even the smallest injury or infection becomes a serious threat. I remember a man named George, 79 years old, lean, active, and proud of the life he led. He believed he was in good health, and by appearances, there was little reason to doubt it. Yet during a routine checkup, George was startled to learn that his blood sugar had been elevated for many years, silently carving pathways of damage deep inside him. Within 2 years, George developed nerve pain so severe he could barely walk without assistance. His kidneys began to falter, straining under the unrelenting assault of sugar. And then came the wound, a small sore on his foot that refused to heal, which eventually led to an amputation. From there, the dominoes fell faster: infection, immobility, emotional despair, not because of the sore itself, but because of the slow, hidden erosion that had been occurring long before. The tragedy of diabetes is that its signs are often easy to dismiss. A little numbness in the feet, healing that takes longer than it should, fatigue that lingers even after rest, changes in vision that we chalk up to aging eyes. These are not minor inconveniences. They are the body's early cries for help, subtle but urgent. Yet here too lies a powerful truth. Awareness is armor. Regular A1C testing, consistent blood sugar monitoring, mindful attention to diet, not just avoiding sweets but understanding the hidden sugars in everyday foods. These practices are not chains, they are keys. Gentle daily movement, even something as humble as a morning walk or seated exercises, can work miracles that no medication alone can provide. Watching for swelling, noticing any sudden changes in urination, honoring the body's signals rather than dismissing them. These small acts can make all the difference. If you have never been diagnosed but find yourself wondering, if you notice signs that something feels off but are tempted to ignore them, I urge you, do not wait. One simple blood test, one conversation with your doctor could change the entire course of your story. It is not the label of diabetes that shortens life. It is the years of silence before anyone knew to pay attention. And so after journeying through the silent tolls of the heart, the lungs, and now the body's delicate sugar balance, we arrive at another quiet shadow. One that too often takes root before we realize it. Cancer that grows unseen, undetected, until it has already laid its claim. After speaking of the heart, the lungs, and the silent decay of sugar within the blood, it is only fitting that we now turn to another quiet adversary, one that often stirs a deep fear in all of us: cancer. But let me tell you, cancer in older adults rarely arrives with trumpets. It does not always make itself known through great pain or obvious signs. More often it weaves itself quietly into the fabric of the body, growing in the shadows, while life goes on as usual. You see, some of the most dangerous cancers, pancreatic, colon, ovarian, prostate, are masters of disguise. They do not interrupt your days with fierce alarms. Instead, they whisper through small changes. An appetite that wanes ever so slightly, a fullness after meals that once would not have bothered you, a slow, subtle loosening of your clothes as weight slips away without conscious effort. And because these changes are so gentle, so easily brushed off as the natural aches and shifts of age, many let them pass without question, until the disease has grown too large to ignore. I think now of Joyce, a bright and independent woman of 83 years. She had always been robust, always taken pride in handling her own affairs. When she first noticed a bit of bloating after meals, she thought little of it. When her pants began fitting looser, she credited it to just getting older. It was not until her intuition, that small, persistent voice, told her something was not right, that she sought help. They found ovarian cancer, advanced but not beyond hope. She told me later the hardest part was not the diagnosis itself, it was the realization of how easy it would have been to keep ignoring the signs until it was too late. The temptation at our age is to believe that feeling tired, feeling off, losing a little weight, these are just the natural consequences of a long life. And sometimes, yes, they are. But sometimes they are not. Sometimes they are the body's quiet cry for attention. Early detection remains one of our greatest weapons. A colonoscopy can find and remove dangerous polyps before they ever turn into cancer. A low-dose CT scan can catch lung cancer early in those who spent years with a cigarette between their fingers. Blood work, physical exams, PSA tests for prostate health, these are not inconveniences to be feared, they are gifts. Opportunities to catch what might otherwise remain hidden. Ignoring the possibility of cancer does not make it go away. Denial is not a cure. Awareness, vigilance, and trust in our own instincts, these are what protect us. The years we have lived are precious, but so are the years still ahead. Listening to your body, noticing the subtle changes, and acting with courage rather than hesitation can mean the difference between catching a disease early, when it is still a gentle whisper, and facing it only once it has begun to shout, And so, having walked with you through the silent perils of the heart, the lungs, the blood, and now the shadows where cancer may grow, we must next turn to a different kind of threat. Not a disease itself, but the body's gradual loss of its once mighty defenses. Let us now speak of infections, and how, after 70, even the smallest invader can tip the balance between strength and fragility. As we journey further into the hidden dangers that accompany the later seasons of life, we now arrive at a foe less tangible but no less deadly: the slow weakening of the body's once formidable defenses. I am speaking of the immune system, that silent guardian which, after years of tireless service, begins to grow slower, less precise, and more vulnerable with age. And when this shield weakens, even the smallest of infections, once brushed off without a second thought, can now pose a serious, even life-threatening risk. After 70, it is not always the virus or the bacteria that poses the greatest threat. It is the body's diminished ability to recognize it swiftly, to mount a defense with vigor, to contain what once would have been easily overcome. An infection that would have meant a day or two of bed rest at 30 can now unravel the fragile balance of an 80-year-old's health in a matter of hours. A mild fever may be the first whisper. A slight confusion may be the next. And if we are not vigilant, what began as a simple urinary tract infection, a common cold, or a skin wound, can spiral swiftly into sepsis, pneumonia, or multi-organ failure. I think now of Walter, 85 years old, sharp of mind, steady of foot, a man who still walked the neighborhood each morning. One day he felt a little tired and, like so many of us, he thought nothing of it. By the afternoon, he developed a mild fever. By the next morning, he was confused, unsteady on his feet, barely able to stay awake. His family rushed him to the hospital where doctors discovered a urinary tract infection had spread to his bloodstream. Walter was lucky, he survived, but not without a long, grueling recovery that stole much of the independence he had cherished. You see, after 70, infections rarely roar into our lives with unmistakable drama. More often they arrive as small changes, a subtle shift in alertness, an unexplained fatigue, a new unsteadiness. And because these changes are so often mistaken for the natural slowing of age, treatment is delayed, and delay at this stage of life can be deadly. But knowledge is a lantern in this darkness. There is so much we can do to guard ourselves and our loved ones. Staying hydrated, keeping small wounds clean, washing hands regularly, receiving vaccines, including the flu shot, the pneumonia vaccine, and now others as recommended. These simple steps are shields of remarkable strength. Paying close attention to fevers, confusion, or sudden declines in energy can mean catching an infection early while it is still manageable, rather than waiting until the body is overwhelmed. Our immune systems, after years of faithful service, may no longer charge into battle with the same vigor. But that does not mean we are defenseless. It simply means we must be wiser, faster to act, more willing to listen to the quiet signs that trouble may be near. And now, as we prepare to close this conversation, there remains one final, often underestimated threat, not a disease of the blood, the breath, or the bones, but a simple, devastating truth of gravity and aging. Let us now speak of falls, and how a single misstep can alter the course of a life. Of all the silent threats that walk beside us after 70, perhaps none is so underestimated or so devastating as the simple act of falling. A stumble, a slip, a single missed step. Things that once would have brought only a bruise or a laugh in our younger days can, in these later chapters, mark the beginning of a far more serious decline. It is not merely the broken bone that steals away strength after a fall, it is everything that follows. The immobility while healing, the hospitalization that exposes the body to infections, the muscles that weaken from lack of use, the confidence that slips away even faster than the footing did. A fall often robs not just the body's strength, but the spirit's will to venture out, to move freely, to live unafraid. And once that independence is shaken, it becomes all too easy for isolation, depression, and further physical decline to take root. I remember a patient named Carol, an 80-year-old woman who until the day of her accident lived alone with great pride. She tripped on a small rug in her hallway, such a simple, ordinary thing. She fractured her hip and underwent surgery, and while the operation itself was successful, something deeper was lost. Carol became hesitant, fearful of falling again. She stopped venturing beyond her front porch. She moved less, and as her muscles weakened, her world grew smaller. Within a year, the vibrant, independent life she had known had narrowed to a single armchair by the window of an assisted care facility. It does not always happen this way, but it happens often enough, far too often, that we must take it seriously. A fall is not an inevitable consequence of aging. It is a risk that can be managed, a danger that can often be prevented with care, foresight, and small acts of preparation. Simple changes save lives, clearing clutter from hallways and walkways, securing rugs firmly or removing them altogether, adding handrails and grab bars in the bathroom, ensuring good lighting throughout the home, choosing sturdy non-slip shoes even indoors, regular vision checks, exercises to strengthen the legs and improve balance, and the humility to use a cane or walker when needed. These are not signs of weakness, they are signs of wisdom. Even more important than protecting the body is protecting the spirit. After a fall, it is crucial to rebuild confidence, to encourage gentle movement, small outings, steady steps forward so that fear does not build a prison where once there was freedom, because in the end, protecting yourself from falls is about so much more than protecting your bones. It is about guarding your independence, your dignity, and your precious ability to move through this world on your own terms for as long as you are able. As we come to the close of our time together today, I want to leave you with this thought. Life after 70 is not simply about surviving, it is about understanding where the real dangers lie so that we can protect the life that still stretches before us with strength, with grace, and with purpose. It is not fear that guides us now, but awareness. It is not great sweeping changes that preserve our days, but the small, steady choices we make. To listen more carefully to our bodies, to act more quickly when something feels off, to cherish the quiet, simple rhythms of care that give our later years their beauty and their strength. The heart does not have to fail in silence. The lungs do not have to wither without warning. Diabetes does not have to steal our vitality unnoticed. Cancer does not have to grow in secret. Infections do not have to overpower us quietly. And falls, those simple, devastating falls, do not have to define the end of a story that deserves a longer, fuller telling.